Starters, everybody, thank you so much for joining. This is going to be a really good one. What we like to talk about a lot at Heartletics is helping you guys become the best version of yourselves. And that does not mean just eating healthy and working out and, tracking your macros. What it means also is like mentally, emotionally, but also spiritually as well. And there's a common factor that it doesn't matter if you're a guy, it doesn't matter if you're a girl, it doesn't matter if, let's say, you're in your 20s, your 50s, or your 60s, or anything like that, your race, religion, anything. A lot of people struggle with bad habits and learning how to overcome those bad habits. A lot of people struggle with addictions, right? And in today's little podcast, this is exactly what we want to dive into, And as I bring up Jeremy here in a second, he's going to give you guys a full, big overview picture in terms of just like how he helps out other guys, how he can help out you guys when it comes to, watching this presentation that we're going to go over and just Jeremy's incredible transformation that he had to overcome himself. So, with that being said, Jeremy, would you mind giving introduction, brother? Who are you? Spill the beans, man.
So I'm a 47-year-old single dad, grandfather. I am a licensed chemical dependency counselor. I'm also a coach for Heartletics. But I spent 25 years of my life in addiction. I had a cocaine habit at the age of 12, and it rocked on all the way until I was 39 years old. Went to jail in the same jail I used to be a cop in. Have had many successful businesses and lost them due to my addictions. 3 failed marriages. There's a lot of things that went on through my life to lead me where I am today. Every bit of it has served a purpose to make it where I'm able to help people get past not just addictions, but bad habits, bad mindsets, and bad ways of thinking. So
Yeah.
I've got not just the book smarts on it, I've got the street smarts that give me a little bit of credibility to talk about the subject.
I got this from Tony Evans on YouTube. I happened to listen to one of his videos and I really enjoyed it, where he talked about emotional strongholds. And some of these addictions have a lot to do with the emotions and these underlining things that once again we kind of just sweep underneath the rug. And his analogy was awesome. He said, if there was the fire alarm inside of your house, constantly beeping because there was a fire, what are you going to do? Are you going to take a hammer and be, all upset at that fire alarm and just start swinging away at it just because it's too loud and it's beeping? It's like, no, you want to focus on, what is the issue that's causing that fire alarm to go off, which is the actual fire itself.
First and foremost, I want everybody to take their blinders off of what addiction is. Addiction is not just simply drugs and alcohol, because that's what society has led us to believe. We don't believe that food can really be addiction, social media, things like that. Addiction is, well, most all addictions are, or if they're not, they can turn into a chronic mental health disorder. Understand that it can turn into a disorder. And what that means is it's a compulsive use of a substance or engagement in unsafe activities, things like that, despite the consequences of what you're doing. No, you don't care. That's where addiction stems from. And understanding that it is a brain disorder, it is a chemical disorder in your brain that is being twisted and skewed is key. You've got to understand that it's your brain's chemicals that you're jacking with, okay? And it's going to mess with your brain circuitry that has to do with your reward system, your stress system, and your self-control, okay? It's fundamental to understand that those chemicals are what you need to make change, and how to get those back to where you need to be is going to have a lot to do with understanding the cycle of what a trigger is. So we can have any kind of trigger. It can be a physical trigger, it can be an emotional trigger, it can be anything. Okay, trauma response, boredom. A lot of people go look in their refrigerator, stand there in front of it for 5 minutes looking for something to eat. They're not really hungry, they're bored. Okay, it's just a trigger. Boredom becomes a trigger. So take any drug, for instance. Okay, somebody who's been through trauma, whenever they're dealing with some kind of emotional pain, flashback, whatever, they get that emotional trigger. Okay, that memory is created and they start craving whatever is going to help them. Okay, and it doesn't matter if it's sex, cigarettes, cocaine, heroin, marijuana, it doesn't matter. You're going to get that craving. Okay, and that's where the neural pathways, where your brain automatically starts firing that you need to go get that, go get that, go get that. Okay, we'll get into how to stop that later, but that neural pathway that you've created is going to lead you straight to using. And as you use, that neural pathway is strengthened. So rather than your normal reward system going, okay, I'm going to go for a walk and I'm going to get this out of my head, your neural pathway has been rewired to look to that source of your addiction to find that satisfaction, that ease, that comfort that you've been looking for. And pretty soon, it's a survival mechanism for you. Okay. Many people think addiction is a choice. Okay. And addiction, many of them start out as a choice. Understand, nobody woke up one day and says, I choose to be an addict. I choose to be addicted to food. I choose to be addicted to heroin. They made a choice one time, and about 80% of all addicts, it takes a hold of their brain so tightly that it becomes a mental health disorder, because that's what addiction is a mental health disorder. And once that becomes a survival technique for you, that addiction is created. And then it just turns into this vicious cycle. And there are ways to break this cycle, but it's all starts with mindset change. Um, when you look at the term recovery, because you've got addiction and you've got recovery from addiction, you've got to look at, Samsha says recovery is changing your entire life, everything about your entire life. Well, we can't change everything about our entire life. We can't change all the people we're around. We can't change our job. We can't change everything. But what we can change is the way we think about everything. And that's the important thing to understand when it comes to changing, whether just bad habits or addiction. So the big question is, ask yourself as we go through this, what are you actually addicted to? And understand, guys, the number one substance, the number one addictive substance in the world is sugar. It's 800 more times addictive than cocaine. These triggers that we have, they're going to stem from different things. Okay, if you've got a tough job and it keeps you anxious and it keeps you on edge all the time and negative thinking, guys, 6 months of that kind of environment can lead you to a diagnosable DSM-5 anxiety disorder. Um, the same thing when it comes to porn, to sex, to anything like that. Anything that has a prolonged lifespan of 6 months, you're looking at a diagnosable disorder. But to overcome these things, these sound super easy, but when you're in the midst of your addiction, living a healthy lifestyle, I mean, how many of you guys have seen those funny memes with all the meth people, no teeth in their head, weighing like 97 pounds? Everybody makes a big joke out of them. Well, they are pretty funny. But then when you see those people in recovery living a healthy life, you can see that that healthy lifestyle is possible. And it's the same thing for somebody who is obese, who has had a eating disorder, somebody who has been too addicted to comfort in their life and has sat around and got complacent with their lifestyle and doesn't exercise or do what they need to with their body. But one of the big keys to living that healthy lifestyle is staying active in your recovery. And recovery is a range of many different things for many different people. For addicts, it's support programs like AA and NA. There are food groups, there are sex groups, there are all kinds of different things you can get into for support group. That's just one way to stay active in your recovery. Servitude is another way to stay active in your recovery. Big thing for all of us in this group right here. I mean, you look at AA. AA is just a group of people that are like-minded trying to fight the same thing. In the same way, we're kind of FA, Fats Anonymous. You know, we want to stay away from getting fat again. So we support each other, we help each other, we push each other to stay inside this lifestyle. Okay. So staying active in that recovery, staying active in that lifestyle is going to help you out. So servitude is really helpful. And along with that servitude, you've got to have a strategy. And a plan is a plan. But unless you execute that plan, it's not going to do you any good. So you've got to have strategies how to avoid things. And a lot of people get the idea, well, if I get the junk food or if I get the drugs or if I get the alcohol out of my house, then it won't be a problem. Well, that's just a lie you're telling to yourself. Because until you get the food, the drugs, the alcohol out of you, it's going to come right back into your home. And that's just the bottom line. And getting that out of you requires a change in your way of thinking. It also requires a change in the kind of people you hang around. Okay. You've always heard that saying, if you're the smartest person in the room, you need a new room. Well, if you're the most fat person in the room, you need a new room too. Or if you're the most addicted person, you need a new room. You need to get to a place where people are pushing you to become better, to grow, become the best version of yourself, just like we do here. And guys, taking time to enjoy yourself. We got a lot of guys on here that have some crazy schedules. I mean, Coach Brian, he was one of the star that poster children for crazy schedule, but still had success because he prioritized, even through alternating swing shifts and everything he did. He chose to take his unhealthy lifestyle and the bad food choices and everything that he was doing, and he prioritized that time for himself to become the best version of himself. And in that, learned how to become a better person, a better dad, closer to God. Everything he grew through because he took that time for him to enjoy himself, to do what he needed to do. With all that, though, everything from 1 through 5 there, guys, boils down to how you modify your thinking. Okay. And again, recovery is changing how you think about everything in life. Okay. Caffeine is a big one for most of us in this group. Okay. How many of you guys drink energy drinks almost daily? I do a couple of them a day, man. We're crazy about it because we know what caffeine does to us when we're working out, and it can help curb hunger and things like that. But we've got to be very careful. So try going a week without an energy drink. You'll know if you're addicted. Okay. You try going a day and see what you do. You got to change the way you think about things and open your eyes to what you may be addicted to and what kind of changes you need to make to change your thinking. And number 7, and probably the most important, is asking for help, guys. Um, we as men hate doing that. We don't want our vulnerability to come out. We don't want our pride to get hurt. We don't want anybody to, smash what ego we do have. But we were never meant to go through anything in this world alone. God created man and woman. There's a reason why there are other people. And there's a whole lot of people a lot smarter than me that I absolutely ask for help. I mean, I'm a counselor, but every counselor has a good counselor. In fact, I've got 2. We have to learn to ask for help in any struggling situation. Okay. If you have an elbow injury and you're like, hey, I can't do my workout, I can't just fall off the app. I got to reach out to Coach Joe and Coach Mark and say, hey, what kind of modifications can we do? Or what can I do to help this heal faster so I can stay on track? Guys, it's the same thing when we're talking about bad habits, addiction, things like that. You need to find somebody who has been through that and ask them, how did you overcome it? What are some things that you can do, some strategies, some coping mechanisms, things like that that can help me get away from this? Because understand, these addictions, these bad habits, they are escape, guys. They are a coward's escape from pain, trauma, discomfort, stress, and even our own day-to-day reality. So we've got to learn how to ask for help. Understand, guys, when we talk about the brain, okay, and what addiction does to our brain, um, you remember back 2 slides where it was, the trigger, and then you have some response. Between stimulus and response, there's a space, and in that space, our power to choose our response, okay? In our response lies our growth and, most of all, our freedom, okay? Understand, your addiction, whether you've had chemical addiction, food addiction, porn addiction, you're messing with the chemicals in your brain. So we're talking about dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, your endorphins. Okay. Dopamine is your reward chemical, the one that makes you feel good for completing things. How can we get those under control, or how can we access those more frequently? And understand, guys, 3 out of 4 of these, exercise is underneath it. Some form of exercise is there. So with dopamine, completing a task, eating food, doing self-care actions like exercising, celebrating your wins, which we do every Sunday. Okay. How many of you guys feel great on Sunday when you posted, you're down a few pounds, you've done this, you've done that? That is our dopamine receptors going up. Okay. That is what's making us feel good. And achieving goals. What your addiction does to those, especially if it's a chemical addiction, it causes your body to surge and dump all the dopamine you have until you go chasing the high. And understand, guys, social media is one way that people don't realize that they do this. Scrolling through TikTok, through these funny Instagram reels, things like that, things that make you feel good, that are giving you those happy juices, that's messing with your dopamine receptors. It's also messing with your oxytocin, which is your love hormone. Okay. This is the one that doesn't necessarily have exercise in it, but playing with your pet, physical affection from a spouse, your kids, giving or getting a compliment, doing something nice for somebody, or just a hug from somebody. These things increase our oxytocin levels. understand in the midst of your addiction, your oxytocin, and it doesn't matter what addiction it is, your oxytocin goes down to the very lowest form. And then your serotonin, this is your mood stabilizer. Okay. And we want everybody to be in a good mood. I tell everybody a body in motion cannot stay in an upset, angry, depressed, frustrated state of mind. You cannot. So if you're sitting there anxious, upset, angry, maybe you had an argument with your wife, go for a 10-minute walk and come back, and you're automatically going to feel better because you've raised your serotonin level. You've improved your mood just by physical movement. So meditation, swimming, walks in nature, spending time in mindfulness and prayer and meditation are one of the biggest ways to get your serotonin back up. And again, your serotonin levels in the midst of your addiction, looking for that false high from whatever bad behavior you're doing, kills your serotonin levels. And then your endorphins. And our endorphins are our natural painkillers in our body. Exercise, exercise, exercise. One of the biggest ones for your endorphins. You're going to get a huge endorphin dump whenever you start exercising. Watching something funny and laughing. Okay. Understand, watching those Instagram reels or those funny TikToks, things like that, that's messing with your natural endorphin level. If you laugh and chuckle with your kids, that's natural. If you're getting it from some sort of social media device, from, and this is the bad part, say bullying people, making people feel less, that's another way people get an endorphin dump. And they also, kind of some narcissistic traits coming out there, but they are using that to make themselves feel better. Dark chocolate is a great thing to help with that. Essential oils, and again, exercise, 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 guys. So understanding the different kind of chemicals in your brain and how to get those back to normal has to do with all those things. The more you do all of those things, the more natural you're going to get those chemicals balanced back in your brain. So you got to pause for a minute and think. Between stimulus and response, there is space. Okay. It's our job, it is our responsibility to cultivate the space between thought and action. It's not a choice, it's a responsibility, guys. Because we can continue down the same roads with the same bad habits, but understand you're making that choice. Just like me, yes, I had a diagnosable addiction. Okay. Was it a choice once I got into recovery? No, I was physically dependent, mentally dependent on methamphetamines. After I got clean, then it became a choice of, okay, I've had 90 days of clean and sober time. Yes, I could go back to this, or I can make the choice to feel that pain, to deal with the situation, reach out, get the help I need, use the coping skills I've learned, and continue into my recovery, continue into sobriety, continue into new behaviors. So you've got to cultivate that space, guys, between the trigger and response. You have to make the choice of which one you're going to follow, your old pathways or new one. Okay. And like Joe always says, you can't control the first thought, but you can control the second. And that second one is the most important, guys. So that, let your choices matter.
Jeremy, I love that, man. One of the things that you said a lot, I was actually taking down notes when you were speaking, Jeremy. Um, you said a lot about changing your thoughts. You have to change your own thinking. And then you actually went into some details in terms of like, how does that actually like, what does that actually mean? How do you actually change your thinking? And a few things, right? You talked about changing your environment, avoiding toxic people, and asking for help, you know? Would you say that like is asking for help like the hardest things that what you would typically, say guys have to overcome first?
In the beginning, absolutely. Nobody wants to admit that they have a problem, especially men. Um, Guys, men have a 80% higher suicide rate and a 72% higher addiction rate than females. Women have no problem jumping into treatment, recovery, things like that to get help. Men, our pride gets in the way. We don't want to stop and ask for directions. We're definitely not going to stop and admit that, hey, we have a food problem, we have a porn problem, we have an addiction problem, but we have to. The importance of realizing that there's guys like me out there that I could tell you things, and I've seen things in my life, and I'm more than happy to share any of them with anybody, anytime, that most people would not come back from. I've seen death, I've seen overdose, I've seen stuff like that. But because of those things, I know the importance of asking for help because I don't want to become one of those statistics. And I don't want to even what you guys do either.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure, man. And community and just support, network, all that stuff, like that helps you out tremendously, especially with, like you said, about having like-minded individuals. At the bottom of every email that I send out, I always have the Bible verse, Proverbs 27:17, right? As iron sharpens iron, one man sharpens another. And it's really to have those people in your community, your network to kind of support you. You mentioned a few things about ours, in terms of like celebrating our wins, in terms of like how that helps you just feel better, get these positive endorphins going. But you also said one of the biggest things to kind of help somebody out is exercising.
Mhm.
But one of the things that I hear all the time, Jeremy, is man, I lack the motivation, to work out. Do you think it's more so of like maybe they lack the community? Because like if you're surrounding yourself in the right environments and with a bunch of guys that, they enjoy changing and being physically fit and they're passionate about, making that, do you think that's maybe like one of the keys that can actually help somebody who's lacking the motivation to work out is just being more involved with like a community or people in their corner to support them?
Community, absolutely. But along with that community, what else do we have from this group? And that's accountability.
Yeah.
One of the big things in overcoming, guys, and we don't just have to call it addiction, we can say bad habits. Let's just say that you can't get away from your nightly snacking and you go smash half a box of Oreos or half a box of Twinkies before you go to bed. If you tell your wife to say, hey, don't let me do this anymore. Yes, we have to have the snacks here for the kids, but make sure at night you tell me whenever I go to reach for those, hey, have an apple instead and help me be accountable for my actions. That's what's going to change us. So that support, that community, that accountability that we can get from a group, absolutely, that's going to help us go. And motivation, we all know motivation runs out. Understand if you get around that group of like-minded individuals and guys, like I said, like NAAA, there's all of them. Once those guys start showing up, it becomes a discipline. I know guys that have been clean and sober for over 30 years and still go to 2 meetings a week. Do they need to? They'll tell you, no, I don't think I need to. But I'm disciplined enough to go in there just in case something happens because at any time I could fall off the wagon. So I'm disciplined to show up and make sure I hold myself accountable and help hold other people accountable. We do the same thing in here. So absolutely, community is huge.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Jeremy, you said so many just golden nuggets, on today's episode, man. I learned a lot. Like I was taking out notes the entire time when you were kind of talking, to just kind of just help me, break bad habits. And what I always like to tell people is like, think about the things that's holding you back, right? Some of these bad habits, some of these addictions, as like it's just extra storage in a storage unit where eventually you're going to run out of space. So if you want to create better habits and, better addictions that's healthier for you in the future, we should first start with, hey, cleaning up some of that fire, not just the fire alarm itself, and focusing on the underlying issues. So thank you, man, for just addressing everything. Thank you for going into all the detail about that. And for you guys that's watching this right now on the coaching call, keep in mind, like, Jeremy said it best, and I'll, reiterate, use the groups, ask for help. You guys get access to the coaches, you guys get access to all the other members 24/7. Use the groups. And it doesn't have to be for just help with, workouts and nutrition. This is lifestyle. This is everything. This is, hey, I need help with the stress I'm dealing with at home. Hey, I need help with the stress I'm dealing with at work. And hey, is anybody around to just hop on a quick call? Because maybe I don't want to mention this in the community group. Can anybody, just hop on a quick call with me? Like, guys, use the groups, man. Like that's one of like the biggest thing is the networking. Yes, Jeremy?
Coping skills, coping skills, coping skills. Guys, use that term, coping skills. That's a broad term of everything. Coping skills are huge, and you have to put their tools in a toolbox. Okay. For me, whenever I was in early recovery, one thing whenever I started focusing on my drug of choice was counting backwards from 100 by threes. Go ahead and try that. You got a bad thought going on in your head, it'll go away real quick. There's tapping, there's making a phone call, there's journaling, there's meditation, there's affirmations. One thing that I did, huge I am statements. Okay, this is something I give to people that I'm helping out locally. It's just making an I statement. I abandon old habits and choices for new and positive ones. I let go of impatience and trust in God's plan. I choose the contents of my life. Obstacles are falling away from me easily. I no longer resist the lessons. Then go on and on and on and on and on. Whatever eyes you need to put in front of you to change that mindset, to change your thinking, to get out of that negative funk. So, guys, there's YouTube, Google, whatever. There's millions of coping skills for everything out there under the sun. Do yourself a favor and search it up for whatever you're struggling with.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And if you guys are watching this inside of the Facebook community group, once again, use the group right there that's on Facebook. If you're watching this on YouTube, there's several different things, in terms of helping you out. If you just click on the link below, this video, I'll have in there, some different resources, or maybe you can, download a free training guide to at least kind of share with you a little bit more about like what to do when it comes to exercising, what you can do when it comes to start eating healthier, right? And hold yourself accountable. That way you can start just once again working at those lifestyle changes to eventually kind of help out with the bigger things that we kind of address with on today's call. So Jeremy, thanks again, man, for your time. Any last minute tidbits or tips or anything like that you want to share?
Guys, build a support system for whatever you got going in life. Even if you don't have any struggles, make sure you got a support system, at least 3 or 4 people. Okay. We've got a huge support system in here. But you personally, whatever you're struggling with, build a support system. Faith first, your support system second, exercise third. Those are the 3 things you need to get over anything.